welcome to another Britflicks.com podcast. My name's Stuart Wright, and today's guests are co-directors Mikk Mägi. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
And Oskar Lehemaa.
Close enough. Yeah, thanks for having us.
Please correct me on air then, so people can hear how it's supposed to sound.
Oskar Lehemaa.
Thank you. Apologies. We've not had many rehearsals, so I'm going to let myself off this one time. We've not come on here to talk about how I pronounce names. We've come on the podcast to talk about your movie, the old man movie, LACTOPALYPSE. Does one of you want to give us a brief synopsis as to what the hell that is about?
It is a movie about an old man who lives in a farm, and he is visited by his grandchildren. And the grandchildren now have to stop an exploding cow, because everybody knows that if the cow's udder isn't milked for 24 hours, then the cow is going to explode and cause an lactocalypse.
And could you add anything else to that, Oskar? Would you add any other more colours to that?
I can add a few colors. Like, I think like the titular old man is the grandfather, and he sort of is really set in his ways. And I think it's about like his ways of doing things and grandkids' ways of doing things, like really clashing throughout the film. And I think that's where the conflict comes from, and that's why kind of like it's very very early in the film, like kind of it was a little bit the kid's fault that the cow gets away. So so that's how everything starts unraveling. And I think mine and Mick's, one of our favorite characters in the film is the antagonist,
Old
Milker, who has actually survived one lactocalypse. So and he after that is a man made thoroughly out of milk. Yeah, and he wants to get revenge and kill the cow. So this is like all those parties are meeting and chasing each other, and it's a really fun romp.
I'm trying to imagine now for the listener that wasn't aware of this film, where their imagination is gone given those descriptions thus far.
Did we even? I'm sorry. Did we even mention that it's a stop motion animation?
No. That's why I was saying I was going to say it was, but I was going to wait to see if you actually said it, and neither of you said it. I did invite you, Oskar, to say if you needed to say anything more.
All right. I said everything beside, but that. I said everything else but that. But basically, I'll jump in with the main fact that it's a stop motion animation. It's a really colorful and adventurous film with a lot of creatures and crazy characters. So that's really important, the piece of the puzzle.
And it has a really great scene with a tree and a tractor that we thoroughly enjoyed making. And I think it has the longest fart joke in cinema history in it.
Is that going to be on the poster? The longest fart joke in cinema history?
Oh, it should. Stuart, that's a great idea. That should be on the poster.
Thank you for that. And thank you for everything you told us there about the film. For those listening in the UK, the old man movie LACTOPALYPSE is available in UK cinemas from Friday the 2nd of June, but there is a series of preview screenings starting Wednesday the 24th at home in Manchester, and then on to Edinburgh, Glasgow, BFI Southbank, Bristol, Truro, and then back to the London Picture House Central. And I think the Picture House chain are going to be playing it across their whole suite, all their cinemas on their Culture Shock film night, which is Monday the 29th of May. And you're going to be on tour with the film, aren't you? I believe Pat's your wingman, taking you up and down Scotland and England. And what's your plan there for the nights where you're going to be with your film?
I guess there's going to be like Q&A, so we get to introduce the movie and afterwards answer some questions. And I don't know. I am very excited to come to UK because I've never been there before. So to get to visit London and Manchester and everything in one go is exciting.
And I guess for the listener who can hear your accent but might not be able to place it, do you want to tell us where you're from, the pair of you?
We're from a small hobbit country called Estonia.
We are from Eastern Europe.
We're
from Estonia.
Yes, hello.
It takes a long time to get used to speaking English for us. It's like,
That's actually, we're from...
For me.
You're not my first Estonian filmmaker.
But we have to be the first ones on your podcast, right?
With the worst English.
No, are you kidding me? What Estonian has been on your podcast?
Well, it's a bit of a fudge. He's a Spanish filmmaker, but he's based in Estonia.
Miguel.
Yeah.
Miguel is a great guy. Yeah, of course. Yeah, I should have figured. Was he with Jesus Shows You
Indeed,
the Way?
yes. Okay, and the podcast episode that we recorded ended up being the DVD extras for the German release.
Oh, well done. Cool, so cool. Yeah.
But you are the first Estonian filmmaker, if that makes sense, to come on the podcast. So you've got a first. Well, look, you also co-wrote this as well as co-directed it. So given the wild ideas that you were telling us in the synopsis, what was at the heart of this? When you conceived this idea, what was the little seed that gave us the flower that is the movie today?
To be honest, I think as with every movie, I think like the conception and then the brainstorming and like writing the first treatment is always the like most fun part, because there you like all the ideas are on the table and you get to like, to just like dream for a living a little bit. But I think what made this making this movie special for me was that I think we clicked with Oskar very well, and it was like a very enjoyable process because we were really like in tune, and I think we've like discovered each other as like fellow film nerds or film geeks. So we were coming from different places, but I think we really like shared the love and enthusiasm of like making this kind of film, and like we wanted to make it like good, we wanted to give us our best, and it was fun to make it.
I think most British viewers won't know that the character of Old Man actually is created by Mikk and his university friend Peter Ritso, and they together created the character years ago as students, and it sort of became a viral, just a basic character like Vanamees, or in Estonian, or Old Man. Was this claymation character. And it sort of weirdly went viral, and it's one of the most bizarre pop culture phenomenons in Estonia. It's this weird, scary, really raunchy, bizarro character went viral, and they did like a bunch of really cool sketches, and Old Man started sort of popping up in commercials, and it became such a small like niche pop culture phenomenon.
Yeah.
And then at one point, somewhere in 2017 probably, they decided to make a feature-length film of this character, which was a wild idea. Like, now you see the film, but the inception of it was even wilder, in the sense that no one thought this could even be a feature-length character, or feature-length film character. And that's the point where Mikk got me on board, and we sort of loosely knew each other, but in the making of this film, we became very good friends.
What do you remember being the main storytelling challenges about expanding what was a short viral thing into a 90-minute full-length feature?
I think one of the criticisms that we got like early on was like when we explained the idea of making a feature-length film based on this Old Man character, because like he was mainly known from the sketches, so everybody was like, oh, how can you like stretch this sketch into like a feature-length film? It's never gonna work. So maybe the hardest challenge was to like give the world like some kind of depth, or to expand this universe, like and the characters in the sketches, mainly the children characters, are very like, how do you say, like thin, or their character is just like, oh, they like react to whatever grandfather is doing.
Yeah.
But now we had the challenge, okay, we're going to spend like an hour and a half almost together with them. And so this like high-pitched whining is going to get like annoying at some point for sure. So like, let's make them a little bit older, like let's give them names, etc. So yeah, I think expanding the world was like one of the biggest challenges maybe.
Okay. And what about you, Oskar? What do you remember being challenging from a storytelling point of view?
Oh, totally. Everything that Mikk said. And I think like that there's also this sort of this balancing act of giving this, like Mikk said at the beginning, like we wanted to make it like really good, in the sense, of course, every filmmaker wants to make a good film, but we wanted to make it like, I think it was sort of our like on our masthead, Mikk, like we wanted to make like not an Old Man sketch as it was before, but we wanted to make an Old Man movie, like a movie for the big screen, like, and in the way that we will probably talk to you, Stuart, about our influences like later on. But I mean, we grew up on watching like big movies on the big screen and widescreen format, and it seemed so silly to take this stupid little claymation sort of character and put it on a big screen and like make it so that it had to be epic. And I think that was like kind of tricky, because to root this very absurdist character in this epicness, we did give it like we really gave it like a sort of a structure of a quite hopefully like a solid enough story structure of a sort of Hollywood blockbuster movie. But then the balancing act, to answer your question, like the balancing act then became like, okay, how not to make it, how to still be like retain this absurdist energy of this character and not make it just like a flat, I don't know, like Transformers movie, and still be like sort of quite wacky and crazy and unpredictable, like the character was, like very like punk rock type of sort of weird origins of this character to retain this DNA in this structure.
And there were a lot of like practical difficulties, like how to make the udder, like the, we had like how will they milk the udder of the cow, and how to make we have to make like different lengths of this. How do you say the teats or
the udder? Udder.
Yeah, udder. Yeah.
But what's the thingy on the
teats? The teats
of
the udder.
Yeah. So like how will they like stretch? And then I remember like sitting with Oskar and it's like young like puppet makers and artists, and we had this like other, no, the teeth isn't like it isn't flexible enough, and like discussing the like the bear's ass and like how to make. They were really challenging to do, to be honest.
It was such a surreal, like you sort of forget in the making of it, because it's very challenging and very stressful also, and in days, but you have this weird surreal moments where there's like 10 grown up people sitting behind a round table, really serious, and just pointing to a bear's asshole, which is done from silicone and wire, because
the asshole isn't right.
Yes,
it's not working,
because there's a huge, just for the listeners who haven't seen the film, there's a huge plot point in the film, which is a bear's butt, essentially, and that's the tone of the film. Also, for everyone who hasn't guessed, there's like a huge bear's butt and stuff happens around it and inside of it, and we were really explaining, like, no, guys, you don't understand, the butt has to be flexible, but it has to be, like, also not too gross, but kind of gross, and and that was basically every day on this film. It's insane, yeah.
For the filmmaker who's listening, who might be used to making live action, what would you say are the pros of doing claymation over live action, but then what become the cons, i.e. the challenges of doing claymation over live action?
Well, you have a lot more control, I guess, over like the setting and like the characters, and like, well, when you start out with animation, there is like nothing in the frame, and you like decide like about every detail. Like you have the like maximum control in a sense. But the downside is it takes so long. So like if you have a joke, like, oh yeah, it's the bear's ass or whatever, and in that moment it's super hilarious. But then, like 6 months later, you're still making the joke. So it becomes like a marathon. So because it takes so long to make it. So that's maybe one of the challenges.
Just to give us a full picture then. So the runtime of the Old Man movie is how long?
Like hour and 20 minutes or so,
okay,
around that.
And from a production point of view, how long did that take to complete?
Well, absurdly like little time frame, actually. I think we like animated it like under a year even.
Under a year, yeah. Which for anyone who has worked in stop motion animation will know that this is like Mick said, absurdly short time. I think the whole film from the inception of the idea, like our first meeting behind the round table until the premiere was it like 2 years, Mick?
2 years, yeah.
Which is like, even for a feature.
That's really that's Ferrari speed.
Yeah, exactly. And now imagine like you have to shoot every single frame, individually. So that's even, it's even crazier.
So if the freedom is one of the pros, what would you say is the cons? I mean, cons are the wrong word, but what are the challenges of claymation versus live action?
I would actually expand on Mick's point. I think that you have to create, like, the strength of it is that you have like Mick said, like everything in the frame you put there, and you have complete creative freedom. And the con is that everything in the frame you put there, and you have creative freedom, which essentially means, it's a double-edged sword.
Got you.
Like So you have to, just on a practical side, you have to literally build anything. So there's a lot of, our budget was, of course, super, super slim, and we had a super great crew, but very skeleton crew, like very, in the sense, a very small crew. And so yeah, our imaginations ran wild, but at the same time, we also had to, we had deadlines and budgets, and we had to, yes, you can put anything in the frame, but there's a lot of the time you have to, we have to, maybe not even cut the corner, but I mean, every filmmaker will know you have to compromise, within reason at all, at every step of the way, basically. So it becomes, this sort of struggle of, we can put everything in the frame, but what do we have? What do we have time for? What should we put? That's crazy. Yeah. With every frame, basically.
Yeah, and also I guess the spontaneity, or once you are shooting something, then to tell the animator I know I told you to do that, but we're gonna do it differently again. So to look at his face after a week of animating, what do you mean? So I guess in live action it is easier. Okay, let's try this and let's try that, etc. Until you get something, or in the editing you have more material you can choose from. But in this live, claymation, you shoot something and then you have it. And it's much more expensive to shoot it again.
So in that sense, then, when you're in the screenplay stage, you really have to interrogate the screenplay to know what it is you want the animators to then create. You can't, like you say, with live action, you've got reshoots. You can go back again. I mean, they still cost money, but if you've paid a claymation animator to do something, and then go, oh no, it doesn't work for somebody says that doesn't work for the story, then you you've just cost yourself money for nothing, haven't you?
Pretty much, yeah. But filmmaking in general, it is when you start making something and you see it on the screen, it's such a natural part of the process that then you get some new ideas. And of course, this doesn't work now that I see it because of A, B, or C. So it's hard in that sense, because claymation, doing something again, is it's more expensive. I know it's different budget levels, but I've heard filmmakers who've worked on Pixar movies talk about the same thing, with the animators they work with. It's a case of, you can't just keep trial and erroring. You have to be sure what it is you want to do.
I mean, I guess there's this, well, of course, with Pixar, and I mean, Mikk has, so my background is actually in live action, and Mikk is a sort of lifelong animator, and he also does 3D and 2D and computer animated stuff. And I remember when we were doing this stop motion thing, that Mikk, you were always saying, fuck, if this would be, if this would only be computer, you wanted to do your next thing in CG, basically, because you have a little bit more, the principle is the same, and you cannot do a million takes, but you have a little bit more wiggle room. But stop motion, the notion of stop motion being sort of, you can prep a lot, if you have time. But then once the animator gets animating, then you sort of, within reason, but you get what you get, right? You can still tweak it a little bit and clean it up maybe a little bit, but you have what you have then. So asking for second or asking for a third take is already absurd in stop motion. That's not, you people get very mad. But I think with this film, I think it was really because the film and the character in the film are sort of inherently so absurd. And, I keep saying this word punk, or sort of almost anarchy characters that. Yeah,
I mean, one of the reviews on 606's website describes it as being gloriously unhinged and terrifically transgressive. So that's punk. That's a very punk rock sounding review of the film. So I understand what you mean.
I mean that, and by the way, if someone says about it, feels this watching the film, I don't know about you, Mick, but I'm very flattered by this. I think this is certainly something that we were going for. But I think how we reached it was a little bit almost by accident, because I think Mick had worked in animation, but I don't think anything in that scale. And I had never worked in animation, so Mick was really just throwing me the ropes in this world. So the way you were asking about the script, I think we were doing the script at the same time as we were doing the storyboard, at the same time as we were building the sets, at the same time we were already shooting, because it was so chaotic. And I think at the time it was really stressful. I know that it was very stressful for me, at least, but I think hindsight 2020, right? I think that was the only way to make that film with that tone, because it sort of was unhinged, and it was a little bit, slapped together in the best kind of way, So I think that really informed the end product.
what's some of the tricks of the trade, as it were, for making what essentially is a little model on a table or on a set that you've done on a table, on a counter or whatever, and making that so when it goes, when we watch it, we believe these things are, life size. What's some of the tricks of the trade there?
Well, I think that Oskar was really good at framing the characters in a way that they looked bigger and when choosing the angle and the lens and etc. I think the bear sequence in particular is good, very well framed in that sense, because the bear wasn't that big, but it looks really huge and scary, etc. So it has a lot to do with lighting and camera work, and also I think we had a lot of references to Matrix and other blockbuster movies that we took influence from. So we tried to imitate that in a way.
I also think it's funny that I came to it from a live action background, and I didn't really know. I don't know if I know now any tricks. I haven't just finished last year. Early this year, I finished my second stop motion animation, a short. But I did it the principle. I did it the same way, and how I lens it is the same way I would the live action. So we with Mick, we storyboarded. I think we storyboarded everything in a way and lensed it in a way that how we would love to see it in live action. And I think we didn't see the small scale as sort of a handicap or a downside or anything. I think we did everything the way you would do if you would.
All the same rules apply pretty much.
That's a little bit of an introduction to the Old Man movie, LACTOPALYPSE. Thank you for sharing some of the experiences and challenges making that movie. I'm going to remind people that film is released in UK and Ireland cinemas on the 2nd of June. I missed out one of your preview screenings. You've got 18th of May, you're at the Flat Pack Birmingham. Then the 24th of May, you're at home. Then it's off to Edinburgh. And then the same night, you're playing Glasgow. So 2 Scottish dates in one evening. That's good going, guys. The BFI South Bank, Watershed Bristol, etc., etc. I'll put a link into the show notes so people can see this, can check it for themselves to see where it's playing local to them. But congratulations on your movie. I can't wait to see it. I'm going to see it when it hits my hometown of Hackney Picture House. So hopefully you'll be around for that, I think. But let's get on to the real business of the podcast. 3 films that have impacted everything in your adult life. Now, you are part of an experiment because you're the first time I've had 2 filmmakers on at the same time doing this. So what I suggest we do is we alternate between each other's choices. I have, just for the benefit of the listener who's not familiar with the format, Mick and Oskar have both given me their 3 choices. We're going to talk about those movies one at a time, and we're going to talk about them 2 against the clock. So every time the 5 minutes are up, we're going to hear this sound. You can hear that at your end, guys.
Yeah.
I'm going to start with you, Mick. So you just take a deep breath for a second. Your first choice is The Thing. Do you want to tell us how does a film like The Thing have an impact on your adult life? Where does that start for you?
Because it had a really great impact on my young life as a child. I remember I saw this film from TV, and I really didn't know what to expect or what movie is going to start. I just thought, wow, UFO flying, and I thought it's going to be something like Star Wars or something. So I was that's not boring, and so I'm gonna watch that one. And I for 10 years, I think I had nightmares from the monsters and the music and everything. I loved it. I loved the film, but it was so suspenseful. And for my young mind, all the monsters and everything, they were they left such an impression on me. I had never seen anything like it. And the music, the dun dun, the Morricone and Carpenter music, the score, it was I felt uneasy listening to these notes for very, very many years afterwards. And I think I've seen this movie like 20, 30 times or something. Like now that I'm older, I'm not afraid of it anymore, but it's still, I think it's one of the most like suspenseful movies I have ever seen. And all the practical effects are like just so well done and like so memorable and cool. So yeah, so
what age were you when you first saw it then? When you say you were young, how old was you?
I think I was maybe 9 or something, or
that's
like
a good age
young,
to get nightmares from a film like The Thing.
Yeah, yeah. I remember I saw like a film with this, like the scariest film that I had seen until that time was like a film that had like this classical gray aliens with like big black eyes, and I was like, having nightmares of the gray aliens. so I was pretty easily scared by aliens, and so yeah, I saw The Thing, and also the movie, the main character of the Kurt Russell guy was such a cool protagonist as well. And so I remember it just left such an impression on me.
And as a 9-year-old, how did you come to choose to watch it?
I just randomly, it was like on TV, so I didn't know like what I'm going to watch. Yeah, I just thought it was going to be like a sci-fi action movie or something. So it's like a Predator or something like that. So at the time, I was like really into like, this old 80s action movies with Schwarzenegger and Stallone, etc. And so I was thinking maybe it's going to be something like that.
I mean, I remember one of my memories, a similar age, was I watched Friday the 13th, the first one. And when Jason jumps out of the water, spoiler for anyone that's not seen it, that was the bit that gave me nightmares, the very closing sequence, the idea that this supernatural thing lived on, because my 10-year-old brain couldn't separate fiction from fact. So what do you remember, what images were the ones indelibly printed on your mind after that first watch?
To be honest, I think it was like the setting of the Arctic and the music. It's just like, I think the atmosphere that was created was just so heavy. It was like so desolate, and they were all like stuck and there was nowhere to go. So like the only place where they went was the other base that was already destroyed. So you can see like when you watch the film, then you're starting to think, oh, that's probably what's going to happen to their base. Like, so you get this like feeling of there's like no way out, or very good atmosphere.
What do you think? I mean, now as a grown up watching it, what do you think John Carpenter does that's so effective with the film? What is it that makes because like you say, it's the perfect chamber piece, even though we're in the wilds of the Arctic, but it feels like, it's like a one room play, isn't it? In a way, there's not like a wild location or anything.
I think there are many things that he does really well there, but like if you look past the effects and like all the gore, etc., I think the characters are like very well directed and very well written. It's like they have like there is very little exposition in the film, so it's like you just like are like you meet the characters, but nobody's like, oh yeah, I used to be like I'm a Vietnam veteran and I am this or that too. So it all you like get to so there is not much exposition, but somehow all the characters are so different and like they all have very unique personality. So I think that's one of the things, and I think the music and the score also is like something that I would like to mention again because So
the time is up, mate. Time is up.
Yeah.
Right, Oskar, we're moving on to you for your first choice. Genre-wise and tone-wise, we're in a similar ballpark, but a very different outcome. We're talking about David Cronenberg's The Fly. Do you want to tell us how that film has an impact on everything in your adult life?
Yeah, I mean, it's. I think it's painfully obvious how, because I don't know, maybe not from the Old Man movie so much, but from my other work, I love horror films, and I also write and direct horror films, and I think one of the things that I've been very fortunate, one of my short films find its audience, and that was also a body horror short film called Bad Hair, which is online if people want to check it out. And it's definitely, I mean, I don't like consciously all the time think like, oh, I want to do something, quote unquote Cronenbergian, but but it is. I mean, I'm not like tooting my own horn. It's not nowhere near as good, but it's a body horror film. It's about a dude like popping pimples in front of the mirror.
No, it's an amazing short film.
Oh, thanks. But yeah, like that. I think that's how it sort of influences me to this day. And I think like maybe how body horror in general influences me is just like I'm just fascinated by the genre. Just like on a sort of philosophical level, I do think we are all just walking bags of meat, decaying with every second until we are dead sooner or later. So, I mean, that's just fascinating. Like our bodily functions are just disgusting. And I think even the magical act of, pregnancy and giving birth is, if you think about it, take 2 steps back, it's just like a nightmare. So I think that's just so fascinating. And I think like, I don't know that it started with The Fly, but that's certainly my first memory of ever seeing or witnessing something like that.
I mean, how does The Fly come onto your radar, as it were? How are you first seeing it?
Look, I think I have to be quite honest that my 2 other films are linked to quite specific memories, and with The Fly, it's a little bit more hazy. I have to say, I know for sure that I saw it I saw it in my like it was a second childhood home. We had moved with my family. That makes me probably like 7 or 8 years old. And I guess I caught it while my father was watching TV, because I explicitly remember it, watching it seeing it on TV. And I do think, you know what? I think I saw it sort of in fragments, because I don't think my parents would have let me watch it. But I do remember it was in that room. I know it was in that living room in that house on a TV. And I specifically remember there's a scene where Jeff Goldblum, who plays the main character, he's transforming. For those who don't know, he's a scientist who does a teleportation experiment, which slowly but surely starts turning him into a fly, because something has gone wrong in the experiment. And there's a scene where he goes to a bar, and he's just at first these supernatural powers and the strength and confidence and whatever are really enticing and kind of cool and giving him a lot of sort of strength and stuff. And he has in a bar, and he does an arm wrestling match with a sort of bully guy, and he breaks the guy's arm, and it's sort of it breaks it. It's like an open how did you say it? Like an open
wound,
open bone comes out.
Oh, bone. Okay.
Protruding bone. Yes, I don't know if you guys remember, but it's probably a very short. It's a short scene and insignificant, probably, if you in the context of a whole piece. And there's so much gore and wonderful special effects and makeup and stuff. This is an insignificant scene in that sense, in the technical sense. But something about it felt like, and I think this is very much to Cronenberg's credit, that he frames everything. So like everything is framed equally, like everything, like look at this is happening now, this is happening now, this is happening here, this is happening here. Like the whole film feels like, I think this film and all his other films also, why I really love him, it's like inevitability happening. It's like rolling, stuff is rolling, like narratives are rolling in front of you. There's a train, you cannot stop it, and this is happening now. And I think that bar scene and that violence in the bar scene, and on a larger scale, the whole film felt like that. And I had never felt anything like that before. And of course, as an impressionable young kid, of course, the violence and the horror of it, of course, was probably the thing that hit me first.
But what's interesting about all that gore and horror is that at the heart of it, The Fly is a love story as well, isn't it?
Of course it is. Of course. And that's what makes it so much more painful, so horribly, horribly painful, is that it's Jeff Goldblum. Like, he's the nicest guy. Of course, he's questionable ethics, and as he is transforming, of course he becomes a quasi villain of the piece. Very much like a it's very murky. He does really, really bad things in the film, but you really feel for the guy. It's almost like Marty McFly would be oh my god, Marty McFly, that was unintentional, but Marty McFly would start turning into a horrible monster and dying. He's so sympathetic. So yeah, that's the magic trick of that film. Totally.
Thank you for that, Oskar. Mick, moving quickly along, your second choice of film is Braveheart. Tonally, a very different film than The Thing. So how has this film ended up having so much impact on you?
I think I was about the same age when I saw it. Maybe I was like a little bit older, but I was still like it was before I became like a teenager. So I was like not a teenager yet, but I was like a young boy. And I remember the setting where I saw this movie was like at a private English lesson, and I was together with two peers of the same age, like young boys, like 11 or so. And I remember we were like very competitive in everything, like how well we could play Scrabble or whatever. I remember the teacher like put the movie on, and we had been watching like some pretty silly like cartoons before that one. Like there was one about like a Mazzy or some kind of like cartoon character who was eating clocks or something. And so anyways, as with the thing, I had no idea what I'm going to watch. And I remember this movie, it's very well made. It's very like epic. And it has like everything that would like, that a young boy would like brotherhood, like becoming a leader, like very epic battle scenes, everything like that. But I remember especially that like in the end, like when it starts getting sad, it's so manly, and he's captured and he's not going to like surrender, and he's like going to like be true to his values, etc. And then they start like torturing him, and it goes on and on and on. And I think like 30 minutes before the end, like I wanted to cry so bad. But I couldn't because the other boys were there. So it became like, I have to like tough it out until then. So I started like, doing the coughs and so, yeah, but I still remember it was so hard. It was like so painful experience in a way, like not, yeah. So as I remember, it was such like a tough task not to cry. And I think I still like in the very end, like when he shouts like freedom, that I went like, I cried a little bit. And one of the boys was like, I was like, damn, like, yeah. So I couldn't bottle it in anymore. And yeah. So and also like in that movie, the score as well, the music was like so beautiful. So as we think, they're very different movies. But in a way, like the atmosphere and the music, it really it painted a picture that like brought me like into this world, and a little bit like in the Lord of the Rings or something. The music was a little bit like Lord of the Rings-esque in a sense. Yes, I think the score was by Horner, James Horner, I think. So
you watched this film at English school, did you say?
We had like a private tutor, so it was like me and two other boys, and so we had like private lessons that paid off really well.
They did. So, but I'm just thinking, where you've got a tutor lesson, and part of that lesson is a 3-hour movie. Did your tutor not want to do any teaching?
Well, no, she was actually very strict, and I don't know. I guess she was like a fan of England and of the movie in general, so she wanted to maybe like shake us a little bit, or show us something cool that she knew that we were going to like, and like I don't know, just she wanted to give us this experience. So yeah.
But, okay, I mean this is what I mean. So you're essentially almost like force feeding yourself English language through a movie. And then having to understand it as much as you understand English at that point.
Yeah, maybe it also had something to do with accents. Like maybe it was like she was like teaching us like the different accents and something, and so maybe that's why she chose that movie.
Never thought of it that way. Yes, this is how Scottish people talk. Cue Mel Gibson.
Yeah, but now when I have like rewatched this movie, it's like very well made movie, but it's so like Mel Gibson, so like it's a perfect movie for like a young boy. It's a perfect like adventure, like kind of like an epic tale. But like now when I'm older, then it's like the thing has for me a little bit more like this rewatch value maybe now that I'm older. But still it's a very well made movie. And
I mean, 3 hours is a hell of a commitment on a rewatch. The best of films, isn't it?
But that movie as well, I think I have seen it like 10 times at least.
Well, there we go. There's the alarm. Right then, Oskar, we'll move swiftly along to your first day out. Your second movie of your 3, me mixing my words up, looking at lists, getting bombarded with information. Is a film I've not seen, so I'm interested to know a lot about this film, not just the impact on you. So we're talking about Grand Day Out. Do you want to talk us through where you saw this and the impact it had on you?
Yeah, so it's a Wallace and Gromit movie. It's a short film. It's the first Wallace and Gromit short film by Nick Park called The Grand Day Out. And I saw it. This is the one with which I remember very specifically, like where I saw it. I saw it in my grandmother's apartment on an old janky TV, and I remember I was sitting on the floor, and the film came on, and I think it was again like as you would see something on the television, you just probably enter into it like halfway through or something. But I do remember very specifically. So I should say that it's a stop motion animation. It's a claymation animation. Maybe I can't say maybe how long. It's maybe something like 15 minutes or something. This is a short film, but I remember distinctly that it's a very funny, very witty, very fun film. But it somehow scared me. Maybe I was like 4 years old, maybe 5 years old.
Okay,
but it scared me on a level that I think. Often claymation or stop motion films tend to do, like something aesthetically in the animation and in their staging very often tends to be quite sort of eerie. I think it isn't there to that extent in the other Wallace and Gromit films, which are fantastic, by the way. Like the whole like what Aardman is doing, the studio that created this film and the other Wallace and Gromit films, and Nick Park specifically, the director and brains behind Wallace and Gromit, just fantastic. This is some of the best filmmaking out there in general, live action or animation. But this film specifically is the first adventure of Wallace and Gromit, a man, an inventor, and his very trusty friend who happens to be a dog, and they travel to the moon because, as we all know, the moon is made out of cheese. And they are cheese aficionados, and they want to have a holiday where there's a lot of cheese. And there's something about the set design and the audio design and this whole world. It's very whimsical, very fun, but at times it's also very sparse and sort of a little bit like eerie. And it scared me a little bit, but really pulled me in to an extent that I think I hadn't, really felt at the time. And I think it's very different than the other animation experiences I had at the time, because of course 94, 95 is when like Lion King came out and Toy Story came out, and that was the time when I was I was in that age bracket where I watched those films on the big screen, and those also deeply affected me, and I'm not like downplaying them at all. It was all very like rocked my world. But I think something about that claymation specifically, and probably that I saw it in my grandmother's apartment, who sadly passed away like around that time. Also, I was very close to her, so it's sort of all those like memory works in a weird way, right? Like I think all those set like the smells and the sounds and the feeling of seeing this film at the first time this is all like melded together in my brain so thoroughly. And today, as an adult, as just a filmmaker, I'm literally here talking to you because my stop motion animation that I did with Mick. Yeah. So, in a weird way, like maybe I'm not like big on sort of esoterics or something, but I think like maybe it's somehow subconsciously like guided. Like I knew that I had as a filmmaker, I knew I had to get back to, I'm not back up, but I knew I had to get to that particular form of filmmaking, maybe subconsciously, because that's what happened.
With your filmmaker head on now as an adult, not the 4 or 5 year old that saw it, but what do you think Nick Park got so right? Because obviously the studio output has been a hit after hit after hit. I don't think there's been a bum note, has there? What does he get so right with the way he does stop motion animation?
I think he just has a perfect blend of adventure and whimsy and really cool characters and storytelling. And I know I'm pretty much, this is nonsense sentence because I pretty much said like he's just really good at films, but basically that's what it is. It's like a really well-rounded package. Because I also think that his humor as a kid, as a teenager, I saw a lot of stuff like for example, South Park, which was really influential, and Team America, World Police, and all that stuff. But I think like Nick Park humor and like the Aardman humor, very specifically, it's so timeless and so like, I don't want to like inoffensive in a way that.
Well, I guess universal would be the word.
Yeah, exactly. That's a perfect place to end because exactly he's universal. He's very universal filmmaking and universal humor. It's what I think like draws people in regardless of age and nationality.
Right then, Mick, your final choice is, and in a way, it speaks to a very esoteric 3 choices that you've given us. I remember seeing this one at my local art house cinema when it came out. I'm indeed talking about Jim Jarmusch's Dead Man, starring Johnny Depp.
I chose that movie because I remember I watched this movie in my teenage years. I think I maybe was like 15 or something. And I just thought that it was like the coolest movie I had ever seen, in a sense. It was just like the cinematography and, it's a very like poetic and existential movie, like where not much is happening. But, it is really hard to make this kind of a movie, I think, so that it's really like good or like, so it's enjoyable for others to watch as much as it was for you to make, in a sense, So it's like a very like a movie that someone out of like this film school would make, like in a way, like. But I think the humor was like the dark humor and the poeticness and like the sadness and also like the humor of the film mixed with the cinematography and the music. It like created such an atmosphere that like really stuck with me for a long time. I just thought it was like very like cool in a sense, like and also like the characters and the performances of like Johnny Depp. The performance was very good, and also like the idea of like him being William Blake, and then the Native American character Nobody, who like couldn't wrap his head around the fact that someone can like in like Western world people can have like 2 people can have the same name, so because and him being named Nobody because no he was like he who speaks a lot but says nothing. So the idea that he traveled to like was taken to the Western world and saw all those things, but when he was brought back, like no one like believed what he was saying. So I don't know, these like ideas really like stuck with me, and also the score, the music, the Neil Young score, I think is one of the best like kind of like indie movie scores that I have heard, and I used to listen to that one a lot, and I still do. And so. And for me, it was like I saw it at the time. Like it's about like a character who's like searching for his place in the world, I guess. And as is like the Tony Darko and Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas and those movies. So I guess I was like a teenager and like in a similar place myself in life, I guess. So like I was searching myself and like meaning and like who am I and what I want to do and etc. So I guess that's why those movies like really resonated with me.
It's fascinating what you're saying about the score, because that's something that I remember well. And then when you go back, you look at it now, and it's like that was mostly improvised by Neil Young. It wasn't like he wrote a score, it was edited, it was this. It was like he literally did like I guess he must have done like a performance, either 2 or more abstract without the film at all, and then. And then Jim Jarmusch used what he got. Yeah.
So the music and the picture were so infused together. It was like almost like it's in a very good way. So and come to think of it, like all the movies that I have chosen, or like when I was like thinking what movies to talk about, like all the movies had very like strong scores, and I hadn't like really thought about it. Or the music was like used very well in those movies. So I think subconsciously, like music for me is like such a like big part of whether I'm like going to be like immersed in a film or not. So yeah.
And in some senses as well, I mean, I might be getting this wrong, but thinking on memory, like where certainly US indie cinema was going, the idea of trying to do a Western period thing and black and white was slightly obtuse, to say the least, in terms of what's the obvious thing to do in 1995.
And then probably the movie did really bad in the box office, I can imagine, terribly. And I think all the movies, The Thing and Braveheart. So
Braveheart was quite successful. I think it's safe to say.
Yeah, but so I guess it didn't do very well in the box office. But I want to say that the Tarkovsky Stalker is a little bit also a movie of people searching their place in the world, in a sense. But I remember I watched that movie as well, and it was very intimidating, and I enjoyed it. But in a sense, I think Dead Man is something similar, but dare I say better?
Wow,
no,
that's a big shout.
No, but when I
haven't even broadcast it yet, and that's echoing in the film community.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say the bell saved you. The bell stopped you from embarrassing yourself even further, to be honest with you.
More accessible.
Hey, look, it's all opinions. It's all subjective. If you think it's better.
No, I loved the Stalker, but with Stalker, it was because I had read the book before. So the main character was so whiny for me. So that was maybe he was oh, I don't want to be the Stalker. It's so hard to be the Stalker. But in the book, he's a badass.
I'm teasing. Look, received wisdom and subjective opinion are not the same thing. I think you can think, I don't know, Smoking the Bandit's better than Stalker if you want.
Yeah.
But Mick, I think you're wrong.
Yeah, I am wrong. I know I'm wrong.
You are wrong.
Yeah.
On that difference of opinion, we're going to move on to Oscar's third choice. A movie, I think, even bigger than Braveheart, and certainly a movie that I think in 21st century, what is it, 1999, is it? Is it 99? Yeah, 99.
Yes.
As arguably had a huge amount of impact on culture outside of it just being a movie. It's quite phenomenal, really, in terms of how instructive it was in terms of the fucked up mess we're in now. When it was, because The Matrix is one of those perfect screenplays, I would argue. And sorry, I jumped in there. So, your third choice is indeed The Matrix. Do you want to talk about how you come to see this the first time and how it ended up being a film you think of as having impact on you?
I remember specifically where I was sitting. I went to see it in the Pärnu Mai cinema, which is from my hometown, from my childhood. And I went with my older sister, Triin, and her friend, Liis. And we were sitting, I don't know exactly, I don't know the specific numbers of the seats, but I remember it was the back half, the right, and because the cinema was completely packed. And I just remember why I remember it. There's a few of those pivotal moments in life, but I remember I was 11 years old, and I remember watching this film and feeling like the ground shifting underneath me. I had never seen anything like this, and it's a kind of feeling that I don't think, it's so profound that I think it's true for a lot of stuff that we experience as a kid, and certainly a lot of films that we experience in youth. And there are a few of those films, certainly in maybe my 20s also, but I don't think anything like this. It was crazy. To me, this was a complete game changer. I had never seen storytelling like this. I think what drew me in initially, and I think for this first viewing especially, was just the world and the world building and the effects and how it, the execution of it. It's just I've seen it a billion times since. I don't even know. I haven't counted. I watched it twice every year probably. And I love some individual scenes so much that I've seen them individually on YouTube. I just want to pop in the subway fight. I'm just gonna put on the subway fight, watch it for 5 minutes, and then go on with my day. So I've seen this film a million times, but this first time, I think I was just so I didn't even get the philosophical the context of the film or the undertones, the filmmaking. I was just struck by this film because it's just. And I remember specifically there's one specific moment. I was watching this film, totally sucked into it, and there's a moment where the agent Smith plants a bug inside our protagonist Neo's belly, which is, by the way, I just realized it's body horror. Essentially, it's very body horror. And this scorpion-y, spidery-looking machine crawls into Keanu Reeves' belly button, and it's super well executed. And I heard it's like screams and crying. I heard like a child's cries in the cinema, and I remember like panning from my view of the screen to the left, and there was like a 6 or 7 year old little girl who was just sitting next to her parents and holding her tummy and just like crying. I don't want to be here. And I was like, and I was a little bit older, but I was also like shell shocked. I was like, yeah, you and me both. That was like, it was crazy. I just felt there was like every beat of this film, every horror beat, every action beat, everything landed 100%. And I think like, you mentioned the perfect script, and I do agree that The Matrix has the perfect script. I would even go as far as to say, we all understand that it's sort of tongue in cheek, but I would call it the perfect film. It's so tight. It's just the tightest film. It's just so good all around. So yeah, The Matrix.
No, because on paper, it's a ridiculous concept. The idea of getting access to that parallel universe, which is the Matrix, as opposed to the world that we think is real. But yet, the film manages to pull off that kind of sleight of hand where you don't feel like you see the join between the world that we're talking in now and then this other world that is ruling what we do.
Absolutely. Yeah, totally. I mean, and you know what is fascinating? Because, I mean, I think this exercise is so fascinating. Why I really love that this exercise that you gave us, like films that in our adulthood also sort of influence us that we saw as children. This film, I watched it so often, and I watched it last time, maybe like last year, end of last year. Oh, no, early this year, probably, because I was in a really rough spot. Like my last film was about to finish, and it was sort of in a depression, as you are, and when you finish like a long project. And I remember watching The Matrix, and normally I watch it, I get very different emotions, but I'm never like also moved to tears by it. But in the end, like the third act, there's this beat where like Neo, essentially, who is the one, Morpheus, he decides not to run away and he starts believing in himself. And, someone asked like, oh, what is he doing? And Morpheus, who is the mentor, is saying like, he's beginning to believe. And I remember watching this, I'm all alone, with my laptop on my lap and just like alone in a dark room. And I teared up because I was like, I'm also beginning to believe in myself. And, it became this film, and through like hundreds and hundreds of viewings had transformed into sort of a story of self-realization and stuff. So it's like every time it's something new and it's beautiful. It's a lovely film.
Well, look, guys, that was a fun experiment to do two side by side. Hopefully you got something from it too. One last question for you both, and if Mick answers it first and then Oskar asks it. So thinking about these 6 films, can you see the influence at all in from these 6 films in the Old Man movie, LACTOPALYPSE? You answer that first, Mick.
Yeah, definitely can, because like a lot of those movies are like blockbusters in a sense, like The Matrix and Braveheart, etc. They have a very like the structure is like very in place. So that's something that we wanted to do with the Old Man movie as well. And maybe like The Dead Man and this kind of movies and The Fly, and there are elements of all these movies, I think, in the Old Man movie in a sense.
What about you, Oskar? Yeah. What do you see? What could you extrapolate directly from the 6 examples we've got that people might see or you feel is there in the Old Man movie?
It's wild that you're asking us, because I feel that there's maybe only Dead Man. I guess I cannot pinpoint it, but everything else is kind of in there. Like quite, we really wear our influences on our sleeves too, because there's like literally, I don't know, Mick, if you remember this, but there's literally shots that we took from The Matrix. Like there's a moment where one of the characters slides down a pipe, which is we showed the frame to the team where like Neo, as he is awakened in the post-apocalyptic world, he slides naked, down a pipe, and the editing patterns and stuff. So it's like, it's not even just like, oh, I wonder how it is influenced. It's like very specifically, some shots are taken from those films. So I think like through and through, I think if you go and watch this film and if you listen to us here, then I think you will see all of those influences very clearly on screen in a weird way.
Well, I'm just going to remind people then. So the film is officially out in UK and Irish cinemas on the 2nd of June, but starting on the 18th of May, there are preview screenings. I will put a link in the show notes as to where those are. You're going to be touring with the film. And then on the 29th of May, which is Culture Shock Culture Film Night at the Picture House chain, you're going to be in all the cinemas on that day. So anyone listening that wants to see the film, listening to this before those dates, check the show notes for links and you can go see the film too. But it just gives me to say thank you very much. Give your time on the Britflicks podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Stuart.